What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Firewalking Journey channel. It's where I share what matters to me as a location independent entrepreneur and investor. So in this video, I'm going to give an update on the situation in Malaysia and just sort of talk about some of the new changes and questions that people have been asking about the Sarawak MM2H visa program. So it's good to finally be back. I'm here at home in Miami for what feels like, I don't know, the first time in ages. So first of all, everything here is basically speculation because it's hard to predict what this government is going to do regarding MM2H. Secondly, there's also the X factor of COVID, and so all of this is just speculation, but I'll touch on things that I've talked to a handful of different people about. So first of all, speculation regarding the Sarawak MM2H future. As you know from my previous video, and if you've been following the news from a couple months ago, the federal MM2H program is incredibly prohibitive to most people who would be interested in retiring or living in Malaysia. And so it's a great opportunity for the Sarawak MM2H, which is a similar program with far better, more favorable requirements. And Sarawak's government definitely and decisively committed to their variation of the program. After the federal government went nuts, the Sarawak government issued its declaration, different statements by various people within Sarawak government to clearly state that they are intending to continue with their program as it was relaunched last September. They see the benefits that they can bring to the Sarawak economy and to the community, and the changes to the federal program in no way affects this calculus. I mean, in fact, I'm sure they see that the changes to the federal program are going to benefit Sarawak's program and Sarawak in general. To address one question though, Sarawak has its own program, its own MM2H, because Sarawak, like Sabah to their neighbor to the north, were independent regions, and they partnered with what was the Federation of Malay States at the time to form the country of Malaysia, with the idea that these three partners would maintain sort of autonomy over certain aspects of their own territory, which includes immigration. So Sarawak in the Constitution is well within its rights to have full control over its own visa program. So with that in mind, you know, there's clearly two questions to consider. One would be, could the federal Malaysian government apply some kind of political pressure to coerce Sarawak to change its plan and change its program? And then secondly, could the federal government just decide not to allow Sarawak MM2H holders to have free long-term access to the rest of Malaysia? And again, speculation, because it is conceivable that either of those things could possibly happen, but it seems to be the consensus among a number of different players in the Sarawak space, if you will, that this would be highly unlikely. First of all, the federal government in Malaysia, the current party in power, really needs Sarawak's political support. And so the idea that they would force Sarawak to change its program, especially now that Sarawak's really behind their MM2H program, it's just highly unlikely. What could be more possible is that instead of forcing Sarawak to do something that it doesn't want to do. Sure, the Malaysian government could decide to strip away some rights, like allowing Sarawak MM2H holders to just freely come and go in West Malaysia. And so this, this would be just a unilateral decision on the part of the federal government. So it seems to be perhaps more plausible, but again, at the same time, clearly that would upset the politicians in power. So the way things are now, that doesn't seem likely either. But it is something to watch. Secondly, we'll talk about the border openings in Malaysia and sort of the COVID situation, which has been unpredictable. So again, this is just speculation, but the things have been improving quickly in Malaysia, significantly, with vaccination rates extremely high. It's kind of remarkable how quickly Malaysia got vaxxed. Basically, the country as a whole is around 95% of the adult population is fully vaccinated. I think Sarawak is like at 92%. The entire population, children and adults, are approaching around 80% vaccination rates. So the situation has improved a lot. The lockdowns, so the restrictions within the community have really loosened a lot. Businesses are opening up again. And there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. And so regarding Sarawak specifically, they have opened up to travelers from around Malaysia. In fact, they have, there was a report that they were going to now allow fully vaccinated travelers from other parts of Malaysia to come without any quarantine. But the borders are still closed to tourism. I've heard maybe end of this year, maybe December or so, we could be looking at opening up to Sarawak, opening up to international visitors. Langkawi, which is the island resort, the famous island resort area of Malaysia. It's like the Bali of Malaysia. Langkawi has its own sort of travel bubble program happening right now, and it's looking good so far. I think it's similar to Thailand's Sandbox, where you could go to Phuket and just sort of quarantine at your resort. And if things don't go well, it's contained. And if things do go well, then they'll slowly open up to other places. So I was told that Sarawak is on a short list to potentially join the travel bubbles in Malaysia. And so you may be looking at, as an international tourist, you may be looking at being able to go pretty soon. Like I said, a guess that I was told was December of this year. So I recorded this video, and then right before I posted, the Minister of Tourism for Malaysia was interviewed on CNBC and announced that they are planning to reopen the borders to international tourists in November, so like mid-November. So maybe it'll be even sooner. A couple other things to touch on. There is also speculation about Sabah doing its own MM2H. They do have their own program. It's really kind of opaque and not well publicized. It's from my understanding, it was more or less just piggybacking off of the federal government's MM2H, except that if you were going to Sabah, you'd have to apply there. But there are now calls for Sabah to follow sort of the Sarawak route and just create their own program from scratch, determine what they want for their own program, and make it sort of full-fledged plan to attract retirees and tourists, long-term tourists. So that's something else to look out for. Perhaps we'll see something from Sabah in that regard. And lastly, the future of MM2H. There's been a lot of chatter about reconsidering the these changes to the federal program. A lot of lobbying by some important people to look at changing back to sort of the softer, looser restrictions of the previous era of the federal MM2H. So, there are people who still are holding out hope that things will improve, that things will change. One thing that we have seen is that despite originally the federal MM2H program's changes were going to apply to everyone, including present MM2H holders, and now it's sounding, it's not definitive, but it is sounding like they're going to grandfather current MM2H holders into allow them to keep their previous requirements. And so if you're on the MM2H, federal MM2H currently, you don't necessarily need to scramble to see how you're going to meet the new requirements. So whether there's any other drastic changes that sort of allow new applicants, we'll see. Like I said, some people are holding hope for that, but I don't know. It's so unpredictable. So I think we just have to wait and see. And regardless, certainly the fact that this could even be sort of an issue and something that everybody has to discuss and hold their breath means that a lot of people, especially in their later years, who are looking for their landing spot to really retire and be comfortable for their final decades of life, aren't going to want to have to deal with this stress, and so it may just be safer to look elsewhere. So we'll have to see how that goes, but for right now, that's all I got. All right, so take care. See y'all next time.